Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. I'm your host for today's webcast. My name is Mark O'Brien. I'm the Director of Business Development at CM First Group. We've got a really great webcast as well as some live demonstrations for you planned around basically around enterprise development and looking at data path analysis and kind of the latest trends that we have in terms of digitizing your business. If you're not familiar with our format, we usually start things off with a question to kind of warm up the audience. And today's first question is going to be about, as we're kind of getting back into the swing of things, what are we looking at for 2022 IBM and other types of tech events are you planning on attending? So the options there are IBM Common in person, or other IBM, another IBM event in person, or another tech event in person, or I'm just doing virtual in 2022, or just too much work and nothing, nothing is planned. Again, only our participants can attend and can vote. So 2/3, quite a few were virtual only, and then there's some participation with IBM Common. About a third of the respondents are looking at Common. Not interests elsewhere in other tech events. And people aren't admitting that they just have too much work to do and they're not just going to do anything. So virtual seems to be still a very popular response. So introduce you to today's speakers. I've got myself, and then I'm joined with John Rhodes, who's the Managing Director of CM First Group, as well as our CTO, and then Roger Hammer, who is our Director of Software Development. So some of you on this webcast may not be very familiar with CM First Group. So we have a explanation slide. We're headquartered in Austin, Texas, although we have people in in all time zones around the United States. We do have a sales office for EMEA that's located in France, and we also have nearshore development centers in Honduras and also in Vietnam. We partner with Broadcom and IBM. PTC have been very long-standing partnerships. Also companies like Embarcadero, Remain Software, Help Systems, and so forth. We have helped over 400 enterprises in the last 12 years, and we really are focused on IBM I and Z platforms. And if you're getting our emails, many of you are looking at your CA2E or your CA Plex systems and thinking about how to transform, how to get the most out of those systems. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to John to give you a little business overview about what's on the minds of our enterprise customers and our software shops, and then John and Roger will be doing a couple of different demos.
All right, thank you, Mark. Yeah, really excited to be here today. So we're going to be talking today about a product we have for IBM I, as well as other platforms that helps you do two things that are really important to development shops. One is maintaining your mission-critical applications more effectively, and also modernizing. So as technologies advance and time passes, new things arise, new ways of doing things, and we have to constantly evolve and modernize our legacy applications. So we're going to look at kind of both of these challenges, and how our product can help solve some of those for you. And really around the maintenance part of it, as many of you are well aware, most development shops spend over 90% of their budget on just maintaining applications, just keeping the lights on, keeping the applications current with business rules, business technologies, regulations. Really consumes a lot of manpower. All right, so if you do anything to reduce that 90% to say 80% even, that really frees up a lot of money to be spent on new development and new technologies and doing things around security, for example, that are necessary. So without that kind of blood flow around budgets, it's really hard to get these things done. So with our product, we're going to show you some ways to reduce the backlogs, maybe help with staff learning, getting new people on board with your applications more quickly, reducing cycle times, and understanding very complex interrelated systems like we developed on the IBM I platform. Well, it's around compressing development cycles. If you can quickly scope impact and quickly create project and system documentation without having to spend weeks, hours, months working on that, really can be very helpful. And we'll show you some ways to do that. So what does the IBM I developer want? I think, speaking, I'm a former IBM I developer. I still do a fair amount of coding, actually. They want a way to analyze systems without having to scan source code and without having to build documentation from scratch, using Visio or other diagramming tools. It instantly becomes out of date. You got to do the same thing over and over and over again. It's kind of like Groundhog Day, right? You're doing the same thing for every project, creating some background documentation notes for yourself, maybe for your fellow developers, and it just takes so much time to do. So I'm going to show you a way to do this with automatically with a software product that will really make your life a lot easier. And one thing that we hear a lot is, people that develop these IBM I applications, and they have done it 30, 40 years ago, and they're thinking about retirement, and they're not wanting to have to laboriously go through every line of code and turn that over to the new developers to maintain. They want to just say, hey, it's here, here's the documentation, here's what you need to look at, and let me finish my work more effectively. Okay, so that was kind of an introduction to what we'll be talking about today. And I guess we'll go off to a poll, right, Mark? Okay, we have a poll here around which software languages do you program in. So if you're on the IBM I world, you're probably doing RPG and COBOL, I would guess. A lot of people are also connecting .NET applications to their IBM I. I certainly see a lot of Java out there, a lot of PHP, and probably a lot of other stuff too. I mean, we're curious to see what the results are going to be for this poll question.
Okay, how do things look? So COBOL RPG, obviously the winner. A surprise second place for other languages. Not sure what that means, John. Could be Python or
JavaScript,
Lord knows. And then about 29% indicated either C++ or C#, .NET. No one said they were programming in Java, and there are a few people in PHP. So interesting group. IBM I, obviously, the COBOL RPG would be a very popular response. Okay, so having seen that, we're going to turn things over to Roger. Or are you going to talk about? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we looked at kind of the problem around maintaining and modernized applications. So I want to introduce a solution to you. If you haven't heard of it before, it's fairly new for the IBM I platform, but it's evolveIT. So this is a static analysis product that is part of your DevOps or development infrastructure. Okay, we look at code on different platforms and different databases. We released the IBM I platform somewhat recently. Okay, so we're looking at source code that exists on your IBM I. That's typically in COBOL and RPG, of course, as we saw by our poll results, but also other languages too, like your CL, like your SQL or DDS, all the surround technologies. So we look at source code in a wide variety of different platforms. And also we look at models that are commonly used on the IBMI platform. We see and also take in models that are developed in CA2E or Synon, okay, or Cool2E, some people call it, CA Plex, also LANSA. So I think that covers the main model-based code generators for IBMI, in addition to native code that's in RPG and COBOL. Okay, so we ingest or parse the source code. This gets put into a big data database that runs on the Windows platform. And from there, you can use it to get a lot of different answers, do impact analysis. Okay, how are your components connected together? How are your business rules constructed? And get a lot of neat stuff out the back end. And we'll look at this live. So I'm going to do a demonstration about this on a basic level, and then turn things over to Roger to do a very detailed business rule and data flow analysis demonstration. Okay, so this is basically what it does. It would ingest source code and get answers out the back end. Okay. Okay. Next slide. So I'm going to just go through the basics, and I'm going to show you this live in a few minutes. But we'll look at the overall product. We'll look at the overall portfolio dashboard, we call it, which lets you look at the assets you have in your IBMI, your programs, your DDSs, your reports, your CLs, and get an idea of how big your system is from an overall perspective, and get different metrics like complexity and like program maintainability, other things out the back end. So we'll look at that live in a minute. Another thing we'll look at is what we call the asset browsers. That lets you find assets very quickly. So if you're looking for a particular program or particular report, you can search for that by name or by description, and filter on different ways to filter, use regular expression searches, and get a list of the programs or other assets that you want to examine or document. Third element of the product is the diagrammer. So the diagrammer lets you visualize how things are related, how a program might be related to different database files, or how a field may be related to a business term, and quickly see in a graphical way how things flow. Okay, and we'll look at this live, of course. You can do a lot of things within the diagram, right? Other than just visualize. I can also export this to external tools and do other things with it. We'll also look at our custom code search. So this is like a Google type search that lets you search across your source assets. And this could be millions of lines of code, typically is for large IBMI shops, and find things in the code very quickly. Like you might look for a regular expression, or you might look for a literal in your code, and quickly get the list of the programs and screens and database tables that have that text, and then use that to narrow down and start your analysis. Okay, and then we'll talk about data flow impact. And this will be Roger Hammer going through some real detailed ability to find fields within your programs and do field path analysis. How is data transformed throughout your system? How is it may be entered on a screen, may pass through several programs, and may end up on a database where it gets read by another program, right? So there's definitely a lot of complexity around how data flows through a typical large system. Okay, and our product is unique in that it can cross boundaries of database access and program calls. You can review these paths, and you can start to also identify your business rules. That again, these business rules may actually cross program boundaries, right? So Roger will be showing that interactively. Okay, so I'm going to start off with some use cases. We look at the overview of what the product does. We'll look at how you document a menu item. Okay, maybe on one of your users' menus. Look how to document a program. Okay, looking at the upstream menus and maybe the downstream table accesses. And we'll look at custom code search and how that can be used to discover or solve problems around your code base. I'll turn things over to Roger to talk about some data path analysis and business rules. Okay, well, let's look at the product. Okay, let's look at the product live. So I'm going to show the browser-based interface. Okay. Okay, so this product can be installed on-premise, or you can also run this in the cloud. Okay, in our Azure cloud. But everything we see right here is browser-based, so you don't have to install anything on your local PC or even on your servers if you don't wish to. Okay, we do need access to the source code, of course, because we're going to parse the source code. And what you're seeing is what happens after the source code has been parsed. So here's our main interface. We can see things that apply to the entire system. Like here on this dashboard, I can see how many programs have we recently added, how many we updated. Okay, it looks like we have about 1,000 programs in our system here. This is a demonstration system, got a couple print files, got 55 display files, and about 30 database tables. Okay, I can also see how these counts change over time. So we can see trending. So maybe last year I had 500 programs, this year I got 1,000. If it's for a real system, I would see some trend lines showing up here in these different widgets here. Okay, I can also look at things at a summary level. So I want to quickly see how many programs do I have, how many screens do I have, how many tables do I have. I kind of see that in the pie chart. Okay, and also that is also trendable over time. So if I had different counts, I could see how my system is growing over the months and years. Okay, lots of other aspects of the system here. I can navigate to different windows. Okay, I can look at code. I can look at graphs. I can even take screenshots interactively here to save those for other developers to look at and get notifications, etc. So on the left-hand side here, I got my menu. Okay, we just saw the dashboard. We looked at statistics and the summary of how the objects are making up my system. I'll go into menus. I'll go into asset browsers in a minute, looking at different application programs, and copybooks and screens, etc. And then a lot of different other things here, like object management. I can filter by object type or by name. We'll look at text search. We'll look at business terms and other things. So a lot of different aspects to the product. I'm really going to focus on just a few specific use cases for this demonstration, just in the interest of time. But there is a lot to the product that we won't be going into today. Okay, so we looked at statistics here. Let's go and move on to menus. So menus make up most systems, or almost all systems, either menus or maybe job schedules. So they're the entry points into our system, and they're the way that the user often perceives how an enterprise application is put together. Okay, in this case, we have a menu. It has different submenus. Okay, and I can click on one of these menus and see how the programs that menu options are there. Okay, so I'm looking at my main menu, and I just displayed everything that is callable from the main menu. In this case, we have like 6 programs and 4 submenus. Okay, I can also do the same thing on the smaller level here. On this account menu, it says 1 program here. So let's take a look at the main menu. So let's say I want to document a menu. Okay, I can start by looking at the top level. Okay, click and see. Okay, everything that I have here as part of it. And then I can also go. So let me see if I can get rid of this real quick. Okay, I can also graphically see how this menu is put together. Okay, so I'm going to click on the call graph. And see how my menu is structured. I got a menu here, I have submenus here, and then I have leaf programs here that are called from the menu items. Okay. So on the diagram, it explains some aspects of that. I can do different things here. I got a quick navigation over here. I can quickly navigate to different parts of the diagram. If I have a large diagram, I can zoom in and out. I can refresh the diagram to make it fit within the screen nicely. Okay, I can search for different nodes. I can see the nodes that make up the diagram over here and also navigate to those. Okay. I can change the orientation of my diagram. So in this case, I'm looking at it horizontally. I can also look at it vertically if that's more appropriate. That's the way I like to see things. Okay, or even breadth first. I can see, what level do I want to see the diagram? Do I want to see just the one object that I'm looking at? Be self here. Or do I want to look at the neighbors to that, the neighbors to the main menus, the one level down? Or do I want to see the entire call graph? In this case, that's the same. Okay, and then layout. I can add and remove nodes from my diagram. I can export my diagram or import. So I may want to export it to save it to Visio or something like that, and also import it in. I can also save it for other developers to make use of. Okay. Lastly, I can also export to different reporting formats, so I can see my diagram as JSON, for example. Do that real quick. Okay, so I'm exporting all this information that's there, and I can use that to basically transfer the information from the diagram to different products. Okay. Let's go back into the diagram. Okay. All right, so we looked at the menu. I've got a view of my menu, going from the main menu to submenus to different application programs. Another thing I can do is I can start to document a particular program. So maybe I'm especially interested in this cast batch CL program here. Okay, so I can look at this node, see different aspects of the node. I can go in, I can look at, for example, what the source code is, my CL source. So quickly just browse and see what's there. I can add notes to it. These notes are shared among the different developers. Okay, so this is a cache batch. I have that saved. Okay. So one of the things I can do with this is just focus on this particular program and start off a new graph for it. So here's my CL program. Let's see what that's connected to. So let's see how that's connected. So now I can see that this CL program starts here and calls some other CL programs, which calls COBOL programs, RPG programs, which in turn call other programs, and then which in turn update the database or read the database. So I can see, quickly how the whole picture is constructed, and then use this to communicate how a system is structured to other developers, especially new developers. Another aspect of the diagrammer is I can just focus on different nodes and different. So basically, I'm looking at. I want to see just how tables are updated. I don't care about reading the data, so I can deselect. Okay, read, and then just see the elements that show me how the database is updated here. Okay, so another aspect of diagrams. Okay, all right, so that's kind of showing you how a menu is documented. Let's move on to looking at how we might document a particular program. Okay, let me minimize my diagram view And I'm going to move into my asset browser here. Okay. So my asset browser, I can look at different things. I'm going to look at application programs. Okay. Right. So I can basically search by name. Okay. So let's go ahead and do some searching here. Let's see, ST. I know this program I want to look at. I can search for that. Okay, then I can see what's connected to this program. Okay, so I'm going to click on the icon here of local connections. Okay, I can see that this program is attached to other programs, 3 other programs. Also, it's part of a menu. Okay, you can see other things like I can go up here and then see backwards what's connected in a backward direction. This program. See this part of 2 different menus. I can also search in a forward direction. See that this program is also connected in some way in the call graph to 12 other application programs and 3 different tables. Okay. Let's say I'm particularly interested in how this program is interacting with a particular database table. Okay, so if I want to see how this program is connected to, in this case, a person table, okay, I can click on the path between icon here and just show the direct connections between the application program and the data. Okay, so I'm going to show this path between. Gotten rid of, really I'm just showing the path from the CL to another CL to a series of RPG programs, which in turn update the person table or read the person table. Okay, so a very powerful way to zero in on a particular database interaction from a particular application program. Okay. If I want to see how it's connected to everything, I can do that too. Okay, this is showing how this source program is connected in the forward direction to all the different database tables. Okay, so once I found, again, if I found something of interest, like for example, this address table here, see, I want to see what also what's connected to it in a backward direction. Okay. So I quickly see there's quite a bit of noise here. So that's connected in a lot of different ways to a lot of different menu items. Okay, so that's probably too much detail. All right, so let me go back and look at that another way. So I'm going to go back to my person address table. I'm just going to look at what is called directly. Okay, so I can also look and see which application programs are just adding to it. And just go backwards from there. So a very powerful way to document how an application program that goes forward and updates data, and then backwards from a particular database table and going back to see which programs update that. Okay, so we looked at 2 different ways to document a menu and an application program. Let's move on to text search. Okay, so text search is a way to search across all your source code, regardless of that type, and regardless of how things are language or anything. Okay, so like in case of text search, I'm looking at different indexes. Okay, so I may want to index my RPG source, my CL source, my COBOL source all separately so I can search within that. Maybe I want to have other types of indexes like DDS or even like text files. Okay, so I can have as many document types and search indexes as I need. Okay, let's say we want to look at everything in the system, and let's say we want to look at different different text screens. Like, let's say I'm interested in like Social Security number. Okay, so I can look for particular strings like SSNO. Okay, and quickly search and see, okay, what has this particular string in here? Okay, well, as expected in most systems, you would find something like tax ID or Social Security number in a lot of different programs. I can see the programs, other assets that contain that string. Okay, I can see where that in the source that is. Okay, expand that. I can see that. Okay, it looks like we have a COBOL program here. I can see, yeah, it's a definition of the field here. So I've got a little picture here. Okay, here's a line of code with a move. And here's an interesting replacement statement here. So kind of quickly see all the places where this particular string is used. And then if I need to investigate in more detail, I can use this as a jumping off place for my application analysis. So I click on this right here. I can see, okay, here's the program. Then start to do the same things I showed you before as far as documenting the particular application program. See how that's constructed. Okay. In this case, it's part of a copybook. And that copybook is referenced by a number of different application programs. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of text search. I want to say that there's a lot of complexity around what you can search for. Okay, it's not just simple strings. I can look and do all kinds of Elasticsearch type things here. So I can look for wildcards. Okay, so just a question mark or asterisk. Okay, regular expressions, any kind of regular expression, and also fuzzy searches. Okay, so this really lets me look for source in a really flexible way across millions of lines of code. Okay, I'm not saying that it's simple to do this, but you take some thought to put in the right regular expression, but it's incredibly flexible and lets me quickly narrow down to find the program that I need to look at based on a pattern of how the code is constructed. Okay. I think I'm doing good on that. So that's the idea of text search, very powerful part of our product. Last thing I want to look at is business terms. Okay, business term is a way to classify data elements according to a common definition. Okay, so let's just look at maybe some examples here. Like you might have the concept of a person ID, a person identifier. Okay, that might be called a lot of different things in COBOL and RPG. And RPG, especially, you tend to see the cryptic, 6-character names. You may not know it's a person ID. Or in COBOL, you might have longer ones, person-ID. Okay, so I can define my data dictionary, if you will, as I see fit. So I can add these terms in here. And then once these terms are added, I can automatically assign these to different columns. So in this case, for this demonstration, I can see that I've assigned terms to a few different here. So like in person, let's take a look at this physical table. Okay, so in this case, I have a cryptic RPG name, ACAASG, but that's been assigned by the system to person ID, so I can quickly search and see, okay, this string here is really a person ID. Okay, so kind of a quick and a powerful way to get your data dictionary in order and do searches on that. So once I have my data classified and all my aliases in place, I can go back to my asset browser and do searches from there, right? So let me see where person ID is part of that. You can see I have a couple different columns here. I want to look at this column, see this graphically. Let's do neighbors. So I can see this column's attached to a record format, which is attached to a table. Okay, and then I can start to do impact on this. Okay, where is this person table also impacted? Maybe what's the backwards path for that? And see the different programs that update the person table and update the business term person ID relatively quickly. Okay, I think that's showing you a few different things about the product and how it's useful in terms of documentation and in terms of getting new developers up to speed and quickly getting just an overview of how your application is put together and how it can be maintained and modernized. So this is really just the basics of the product. I want to turn things over now to Roger Hammer to go into some really detailed data flow and business rule type analysis that can also be accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a poll first. Is that right, Mark?
Yes, we do. We have a poll, another poll question indicating which databases do you run? DB2 DDS, DB2 SQL, SQL Server, Oracle, or other. So, DB2 DDS had 71% of our respondents working with that, followed by SQL, DB2 SQL and SQL Server are tied, and then Oracle and other are down with smaller mentions at only 14%. So, Roger, I think this is kind of consistent with what we've seen in other polls as well too with our audience. So, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Roger, to go forward and give us a nice demonstration on data path analysis.
All right, great. So we're focused on this application. This is a COBOL application, and the output in this particular case we're going to analyze is a letter that is sent out to customers. And so we have some file information that we're going to find here that is regarding an annuity letter. And we're going to select that, and we're going to filter this source code view, this asset view, on those components. And we see from all of that kind of noise of the application that now we can see there are two programs that are related to this annuity letter. And so let's take a look at a quick diagram to see how those relate. And so we see, okay, so it looks like one of those programs writes outputs and the other one reads it. So now we get a sense of the relationships between the programs and the file information. So now let's go back and do some searching. So we can do a search, in this case, data search. And so I'm just gonna, I've already got it run here, so I'm gonna go ahead and open it. So we can see in this case, the path analysis within each program. And so now we have those programs, we have paths, we have forward and backward paths. The up arrow indicates backwards path. So let's take a quick look at our path here. So we're beginning to see the different paths within the program. For, in this case, it's a loan amount field that we're looking at. And we see move statement, and we're looking backwards. So as we look back, we're actually looking at how that field was created. And so going all the way back here, we see that it comes from a call, flows through the record up into a compute statement, which there's two fields a part of that. And then I can actually click on that. We can actually see that statement. It'll come up here. The output of that compute is this other loan field, and then that's moved to my output field, which is this loan amount field. And we can see right where that compute is happening in the source code. So this gives us that view within each application, but I want to start from where the data flows to, and we're going to begin to do data flow analysis in a backwards path view. And so what we've got now is our field. We see the first step in the backwards path. So this is the field that's output into the letter. And then we go back through our group level into the top level. And then we see that that data is read. Here's our program name, this VDR, LC02 VDR program. It's read in, and we see it comes from an input file, and it's written by a separate program. So John mentioned earlier that we can cross the boundary. So crossing the boundary is really important because finding data across different application programs and understanding how they relate can be extremely difficult and time consuming. So having this cross the boundary functionality really helps both from a context perspective, knowing that this is related to the field that we started with, and also that these two programs are manipulating or working on this field. So within the second program, now we see that there's a documerge record, and then we have, again, group level information, and tracing then from our loan amount, we see the move, our loan output, and this is where we find that compute statement again. So again, we can get to the source code. We always have availability of source code views. And so we have the actual source code view with the compute statement and an auto save feature, which I'll just shut off there. And now we see the decision path. So this is critical, as we're going to talk in a moment about business rules. But for now, let's focus in on the data flow path. And so we have two input fields to a compute statement. And if I'm asking the question all the way from the beginning of this path, which was an output field, this loan amount is output to this letter that we talked about. And we were able to trace back and find that it was read from a particular file written by a different program. And in that other program, we know that the compute is happening and generating that actual data from actually three pieces of information, two parts of loan amount and this other item APL amount. So all of those are feeding together to create the output, which is getting stored in that file and then output to the letter. So we can, maybe one other aspect, just continuing back, additionally, useful to see that we can also cross the boundary of program. I'm not going to go a lot farther here, but we now cross the boundary of a call backwards path where this data is flowing from into these other three programs. So we can continue our paths as long as we need to find and understand our data flow information for answering the question that we had, which is how is this loan amount created that is displayed in our annuity letter that goes out to customers. Okay, so let's transition a little bit and think about how this data flow path relates to understanding business rules. So we started with our field. We understand now that it comes to this compute statement, which a calculation is certainly a part of a business rule or is a business rule. But the other part that's really useful is the logic. So we're going to expand this logic. This is actually a decision path or an execution path here. And we're going to come to an endpoint soon. There we go, main line. And so we can see in this path, let's go ahead and expand the other side of this. And there's an endpoint. So we see that this is performed from a couple of different locations. One is this process request. and the other one is this process policy. And we have some different decisions that are made. Down here closest to my compute statement, we have a decision, and I'll show the code on this. This decision being close to the code typically is not business rule, but very much kind of a code level decision. So no more cash flows. This is a process that's batch, and so it's checking to see should it continue the processing of calculating these different outputs for the different letters that will be sent. Probably not necessary from a business rule perspective, although knowing, of course, that it's processing multiple letters at a time is useful. Let's go on up the path. Let's go to the next if statement. We'll show that code. And we see in this case, definitely if it's a true statement. And now we're looking for, again, something that's very process oriented, code level process, which is about finding the end of the data file. So if it's not the end of the file, then keep going. So again, likely not a business rule. Now we come to kind of that upper level if statement. And now we've got something that quarterly runs. So now we've got business rule information, because what we know now is that this decision to run is happening on a quarterly basis. Now we've got a decision to run the process on a quarterly basis. We've got a calculation of this loan amount field. And if I showed you, there was a whole set of data, of course, related to the letter that's being sent. So a series of different fields that are being calculated through this process. And then that data is flowing out through a particular file to our output and getting generated as a letter to our customers. So hopefully that gives you an idea that data flow analysis and the ability to do this tracing kind of data flow is very powerful from the standpoint that I can understand and ask a question about an output field and go answer the question with a number of clicks traveling back across the application. And rather than searching and scanning and then trying to read all the code of a particular program, finding out, oh, this isn't the right one, I need to go to another field and I might find some interesting information about loan amount, but I don't really know how it connects to the other program. And with this view, we see exactly how it flows throughout the application. And then once you understand that information, beginning to identify elements of the code that relate to business rules. And we've worked with customers that have done this themselves, and we have also helped in consulting to identify business rules. Typically, those processes are started with business analysts, and they're defining the business processes outside the application, but they really want to understand how does that data that's impacting the business process, how does it relate to this process and what's happening within the application. So now you can tie the digital world that's running our business to the physical world that our people are actually doing work external to the application. That's a very powerful understanding, because we begin to see how we can then improve both the application and the human process, and maybe even change where that line is. Maybe we want to add more functionality in the human process into the application. Knowing how they connect, we can now add and modify the application to bring more of that human process into it. All right, I hope that helps. And so we'll go back to a few more slides as we continue the presentation.
Thank you for that demo, Roger. We have one quick poll question for you, and then we'll get into some Q&A. And then the interest of time here, we're just have a few minutes left. Go. You want to talk a little bit about the future, Roger, and then we'll go right to the final.
Sure. So one new item that we want to share with you is many of our customers are looking for moving into using Git as their GitLab as their source management tool. And so being able to access that code and distribute that code to enable automation, where we already have a lot of automation on the back end of evolveIT, we're now adding this tool for source access to enable accessing the GitLab information and distributing that code in a way that really helps complete the automation path for CM evolveIT. So this is very close to release, and you know, by the time you make a request to use evolveIT, it'll be available. Of course, you know, we'd like you to get your hands on CM evolveIT. So if you would like to do a free proof of concept, just email us at info@cmfirstgroup.com. We'll provide you the information where you can share your source code or models, and then we can get started building your database and providing it, if you wish, in the cloud, so you don't have to do any further setup. You can just begin to use the CM evolveIT through your own web-based portal.
Time for our last poll question, which is Mint. If you've seen this before, the M means that you want to schedule a meeting with us on the subject. Obviously, we can't cover, you know, you can see how much advantage there is of using evolveIT, and we can arrange a specific meeting on what questions you might have. The I would mean that I can introduce you to someone would be interested. A lot of times we get developers on here, not analysts and business managers. The N would be add me to the our product newsletter. We have one specifically for evolveIT, comes out each month. And then T would be someone that we should be talking to more about this particular subject on enterprise analysis, code analysis. And then, as always, as Roger said, the Mint, the proof of concept is free. Just send an email to info@cmfirstgroup.com. So last, we have just a couple of moments here for Q&A. And one question, Roger, that came in was looking at how long does a POC take?
So obviously that varies on your availability, but getting us the source code, and you know, it's a simple upload of source code or models. We can tell you exactly how to do that. And we have a back-end automated process to get that set up. Once we have that, we also have a very nice process that uses our support mechanisms. So you'll get automatic notification when it's ready with your log-on information. So that can take a few days to maybe a week, depending on our interactions, and it will be ready for you to use very shortly after that. And then we can walk through a process of proof of concept, make sure you understand how to use the tool, and walk through specific use cases for you, so you don't really have to go through all the training, but you can see how evolveIT will present the information you need in your applications.
And can you talk a little bit about the installation procedure? You talked about that it can be cloud-based, I guess, or remote.
Right. Yeah, it can be either cloud-based, can be on-site. For POC, obviously cloud-based is faster for you. If you prefer, particularly in purchase environment, certainly you can set up your own servers and have availability on-site for CM evolveIT.
Okay. And last, how long is it priced? You know, how do you set up pricing?
We price the IBM I version and the mainframe version with basically the number of application programs. So there's a tiered approach. And so understanding how many programs you have will give us the information we need to work with you and share what your pricing will be. This is a very affordable product. You'll find that you'll be able to get up to speed quickly and begin working with evolveIT, and the price per user and for your application certainly will be, I'm sure, well below what you might pay in other instances.
And then another question came in. Do you support PL1?
So we currently don't support PL1, but we're always looking for customers who have a need, and we are certainly interested in supporting customers' needs. So if you have a very specific need for PL1, let's have a call, let us know, and we can begin to discuss how we can support you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hey, we're out of time. I want to thank both John Rhodes and Roger Hammer for their attention and going into probably more detail than we've seen about evolveIT. I've mentioned this to people, but people have come back and saying they want to do a deeper dive technically. So I hope our attendees got what you're looking for. As always, everyone who's registered for this will be able to see a recording of this, which will be posted after a short time after our webinar is concluded. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for your questions and your intriguing questions on today's broadcast, and we'll see you all the next time. Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.